Hello, this presentation is titled Dr. Land's 30 Writing Tips and Grammar Mistakes That Drive Me Crazy. Don't split infinitives. I say that, don't split them usually. To boldly go where no man has gone before does split the infinitive to go, and die-hard grammarians would have preferred to go boldly where no man has gone before. But it's too late to correct this memorable quote from Star Trek, and I wouldn't think of doing it. But typically, you don't want to do that. Tip two, don't opt for active voice more often than using passive voice. Now, don't confuse this with past tense and present tense. Rather than write, Jane had a cookie, prefer Jane smashed the cookie, or Jane ate the cookie, or Jane held the cookie tightly in her hands as it crumbled because she refused to share it. Opt for salvo. What does that mean? Well, look at that image on this slide. Cannons. This conjures the image of cannonballs being launched in one salvo after another. Salvos go straight to the point with punch. S-A-L-V-O. S-V-O. See that? It means subject, verb, object. Rather than there were 17 people who were shot, write the sniper shot 17 people. The subject of the sentence is sniper, the verb is shot, and people is the object of the sentence, the direct object. Don't back into a sentence like this. Having walked through the door and selecting a weapon and taking the phone off the hook and looking all around and entering the bedroom, Maggie aimed the weapon at Mark and shot him. Instead, write, Maggie walked through the door, pulled the revolver from the holster hanging on the coat rack. She checked to see if anyone else was there. She sneaked into the bedroom and shot Mark in the chest. Tip 5, write with thick description. That is, provide enough detail to paint a word picture, but don't get bogged down in triviality and trivial details that don't point to the heart of the story. Use lots of anecdotes. Anecdotes are just short story inside of narratives to illustrate meaning. We love reading stories. Avoid cliches. There are all kinds of cliches. Listen for new and unique ways of saying things. You know, they can become cliches someday. Like this one, one man on his feet is worth two on their seats. Well, that's kind of like a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. Well, not quite the same meaning, but you get the point. Don't write in generalities. Pretend you're telling a story to someone who can't see what's going on unless you show her with colorful details that convey meaning. And yes, realize, you can use lots of contractions. I know the English grammar teacher in elementary school may have said, do not use contractions. She's wrong. Forget that high school English teacher who whacked your knuckles because you wrote a contraction. Boldly write the way people talk, especially when you're quoting them. And by the way, use quotes, but use quotable quotes, not banal phrases that you could paraphrase with similar sentences. Write centers on, not centers around. Nothing centers around anything else. You can say revolves around. Now, this particular tip I've had to repeat so many times in my editing. So try to remember that. This is tip 12, avoid rhetorical questions. The use of questions really betrays a lazy way of transitioning from one thought or paragraph to an. It's good to use analogies, metaphors, similes, oxymorons, and other comparisons to illuminate meaning with word pictures. Her frosty stare burned a hole clear through my heart as her gentle voice betrayed a cruel kindness. Do you see those oxymorons, frosty, burning, a gentle voice, cruel kindness. They don't go together. Remember to place a comma between two complete sentences you fashioned into one. When you change subjects in the middle of a sentence, it helps the flow to add a comma before the word and. For example, Mary walked up and down the railroad track, comma, and Judy followed closely behind as if wishing to be Mary's shadow. Notice this is a compound sentence. Mary walked, Judy followed. You need a comma before the and. Make sure that verbs and subjects agree. Like this ridiculous statement, don't use something like this. Barking incessantly, I put Rover back in the house. You are not barking. Barking incessantly, Rover forced me to put him back in the house. Focus on that a minute. You see the difference? Avoid beginning sentences with indefinite passives, such as the following. There are, there will be, there have been, there were. Folks, this is lame writing. Opt for, again, salvo, subject, verb, object. This is another difficult problem. Where do punctuation marks go? Inside or outside the closed quotation marks? Well, you want to look that up. Alert. Guess what? It's okay to end sentences with a preposition. Now, doesn't the following sound absolutely ridiculous? Ending sentences with prepositions is a dereliction of grammar up with which I will not put. Of course, that's silly. As much as possible, make description dynamic, not Judy had a green dress on. Instead, Judy's green chiffon dress rippled against her thighs as she walked into the wind. You're not focusing on the fact that the dress is green and made of chiffon, but rather you're painting a word picture that shows the reader details. Write with consistent style. If your editor says to capitalize pronouns and adverbs of deity, such as godly or godly, God and his with H-I-S, capital H, kingdom, then you must capitalize all of them as they appear in a given work. But if you decide to italicize book titles within a work rather than underlining them, then you must italicize all book titles throughout. Now, if you'll notice, almost all of the biblical translations of what Jesus says and topics that focus on God, the pronouns are not capitalized, the pronouns of deity. Okay, gender. Oh man, that's been a hard problem for a long time. And it's grammatically, you need to correct for singular and plural nouns. They need to be modified with singular or plural pronouns. It's become common to see the singular noun, such as a person or participant, modified with the plural they or their because of this awkward construction of his or her. In fact, now the Associated Press style book recommends that we say they or their. Even though I think that's kind of strange, still, that's recommended. It does keep it simpler. But the preferred literary style is to alternate his and her throughout a text. For example, in the first instance, this occurs in a book or article. Tip your hat to the gender by selecting her to modify the noun person or one. For example, each participant will bring her Bible to class. Then the next opportunity, opt for his, such as in the following phrase. Each person should remember to bring his identity card to the event. But this is an editorial decision. The idea is to be consistent, however the publisher or editor decides to modify noun. Now, these things really drive me crazy. Make appropriate pronouns antecedent agreements. Organizations, groups, and other collective nouns should be used with the singular verbs. In American English, it's always the group and its members, or the organization and its leadership, or the church and its pastor. Never the group and their members, or the organization and their leadership. But, okay, we know the British, who are the original English speakers, now have modify organizations with plural verbs, which truly sounds strange to our American ears. For example, in the United Kingdom, writers and broadcasters will say, the government are meeting at Whitehall, or IBM are laying off 2,000 workers. But I want you to write in American English, not British English. Don't assume different and various are interchangeable. For example, when you write, the auditor wishes to interview different management teams, you really mean various management teams. You're not trying to emphasize that each management team is different from another team. Write or say compare with, not compare to, as in this phrase. Washington's trip across the Delaware was child's play compared with Dave Jason's span of the Big Lick River. Avoid using in order when the word to will suffice. For example, the president invited the press to the White House in order to announce the launch of World War III. What does in order contribute to that phrase? Absolutely nothing. When you could easily just write, the president invited the press to the White House to announce the launch of World War III. To works just fine. I don't know why in the world we use that phrase in order. It adds nothing. It really drives me crazy. It's too many words. We want to write with an economy of words. Avoid these I's words, I-Z-E, when the root word suffices. That is, prefer prefer use to utilize. I's adds nothing to the meaning. I think people think it just adds legitimacy. Can I tell you that it doesn't? It does not add legitimacy. You're using English grammar American style. You're applying it. You're using it. You're not utilizing it. Anyway, I hope you get my point. You can see I get frustrated. The Cyclops tip. Pronouns as direct objects or objects of the preposition. I couldn't believe when I was watching the movie Noah, Russell Crowe played the title role in Noah. And while he's sitting in the ark talking to his children, he says this, you children will have to bury your mother and I. Your mother and I, not I, it's your mother and me. Did he think he was a Cyclops? He's not an I. And it's not myself, it's me. When a pronoun comes after a preposition or is the direct object of a sentence, you must use these pronouns, us, me, them, her, him. We don't say, us are going to the movie, or she's going to go with I. No, you say me or them. My mother took my sister and me to the store, not I. Seriously? You hope Jill will invite I to the party? Remember, you're not a Cyclops. See, even my puppy over here is just as frustrated as I am with this kind of grammar. This is, to me, like hearing fingernails scratching on a blackboard. Most of you have never even seen a blackboard. Just imagine what that might sound like, or rubbing your fingernails across a wall in your house. Oh, take a look at Joe's and I's car. Really? I's car? It's Joe's and my car, not I's car. You're not a Cyclops. Now, this also drives me crazy. And you're not a chicken. When you're tired, you lie down on a sofa. then you might say, I'm lying on the sofa. You never lay on a sofa unless you're a chicken laying eggs on a sofa. You lay the pencil on the table, but the pencil is lying on the table. You don't say, now I lay me down to sleep. No. Yes, you do. You say, now I lay me down to sleep. But I am lying on the bed. I lie down on the bed. Now you can say, lay down if it's I lay down yesterday. In fact, I was on that bed all day. IT apostrophe S means it is. Now just think a minute. Is there an exception that would allow you to use it's in the possessive sense? There's only one exception. If you name your child it, then you can write, let's go see its baseball game this afternoon. Oh, by the way, meet my son, it. Now, ITS without the apostrophe is the possessive pronoun, its. No apostrophe. Until the end of time, IT apostrophe S will mean it is, not possessive, unless you name your dog it or your cat. This also drives me crazy, like hearing fingernails on a blackboard. God rest his soul, he died suddenly last week. Incorrect. Can I tell you something that might shock you? Everyone on earth dies suddenly. 1 second we're alive, then the next second we're dead. Only 1, maybe 2 seconds lapse between life and death. The correct phrase should be, God rest his soul, he died unexpectedly last week. Here's one that really gets me. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin pre-boarding, starting with our first class passengers. Really? Pre-boarding? Either you board the plane or you do not board the plane. And don't you chuckle when the flight attendant says, please power down your laptop computers, power down your iPhones and your cell phones. Why can't she just say, turn off your cell phones? What's this power down business? Seriously? Well, 10 more tips. The famous crime writer, Elmore Leonard, 87, died 2 years ago. Actually, when I first did this PowerPoint, I think it was 10 years ago, and he actually died maybe 14 or 15 years ago. Well, he published these 10 writing tips in this 2007 article that was in USA Today. Never open a book with weather, avoid prologues, never use a verb other than said. He said, she said, not he cried, he screamed, she shouted. You can say he said with emphasis, or she said yelling at her mother. Never use an adverb to modify the verb said. Keep your exclamation points under control. Don't use those so much. Never use the word suddenly or the phrase all hell broke loose. That's a cliche. Use regional dialect or patois sparingly. Avoid detailed descriptions of characters. Allow the people you interview and the descriptions you bring characterize your personages, your people in your story. And don't go into too great a detail describing places and things. Indeed, try to leave out parts that readers tend to skip anyway. Well, thank you for watching this presentation. Memorize it.